You train mass diffusions on text, on logic, on sequences. They grapple with exponentially more infilling puzzles than autoregressive kin. Hard ones, intractable ones, hidden in the noise. At first they fumble, Sudoku, barely 7% right. You watch their training. It's not just learning to predict, it's wrestling with every possible mask, every scattered clue. A harder fight than left-to-right autoregressors, for sure. They're training for the worst, blind to which puzzles will bite. Then you shift focus, their inference, that loose, unshackled power, not stuck in left or right, but free to choose. Which token next? You design an oracle, pick the surest, the clearest, the least confounding. Suddenly Sudoku jumps from 7% to 90%. Beats autoregressors with 7x more parameters once taught the right order. You test on text, on logic, on puzzles unseen. Adaptive paths, sidestep the hard stuff, dance through the easy. Likelihoods climb, perplexity plummets, no extra training needed. They say it's just a trick with ordering. You show the math. MDMs don't just generate, they plan, train to survive the worst, then choose the best path up. You realize you didn't just tweak a diffusion model, you unlocked a truth. In discrete generation, the order isn't fixed, it's a compass. And with it, these models don't just mimic data, they navigate it. From Sudoku grids to text streams, they find their way. Not by brute force, but by wit, by knowing when to step and where. That's the leap. Train for the storm, then steer for the calm. Mask diffusions weren't just another generator, they were a new way to see the dance of tokens. Order, once a cage, became a key. Okay, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are diving headfirst into something pretty fascinating. Mass diffusion models, or MDMs. And our sources paint this picture of a model that starts off, well, struggling, like really struggling. Think barely 7% right on logic puzzles. But then, boom, they learn this trick, this secret handshake during inference, and suddenly they're brilliant. 90% accuracy. It's quite the turnaround.
It really is. And what's so interesting here is how it exposes this core tension in AI, right, between how models learn versus how they generate sequences. We're looking at sources that highlight a really clever move, basically sidestepping these massive training hurdles by changing how they generate the order of operations.
Right, so it's like they're designed to train on these incredibly hard, almost intractable problems.
Exactly.
And then they find this, I don't know, escape hatch during inference, a smarter way to use what they learned.
Precisely, a strategic shift in how they think or plan their way through the problem. And that's what unlocks these, frankly, dramatic improvements, even beating older models.
So that's our mission. Unpack this paradox. Why train so hard, face these intractable problems, and then how does changing the inference strategy flip the script? This is where we see that idea.
Oh.
Order, once a cage, became a key.
The training torture chamber, why MDMs have it hard.
Okay, let's dig into that training struggle first. Our sources start by comparing these MDMs, mass diffusion models, with the more traditional ones, autoregressive models, ARMs.
Yeah, and there's a fundamental trade-off highlighted right away. MDMs take on this huge load during training. It's way harder for them initially.
But the payoff is flexibility later on.
Exactly. Think about ARMs they learn sequentially, right? Usually left to right, like predicting the next word in a sentence. Simple enough. MDMs, they're order agnostic. They're trained to solve any possible infilling problem you can throw at them.
Any problem, like fill in any blank, anywhere, based on any context.
Pretty much. Imagine a sequence of length L. An ARM solves maybe L prediction problems, and MDM tackles something like, well, the math says theta L2L problems, exponentially more.
Whoa. Okay, that sounds computationally brutal. Exhausting, like you said.
It absolutely is. And the sources back this up theoretically and empirically. For even, relatively simple data, many of the specific masking problems MDMs have to learn are formally computationally intractable.
Intractable, like practically impossible to solve efficiently.
Kind of like trying to reverse a strong crypto hash. It's designed to be incredibly difficult. That's the level of challenge embedded in some of their training tasks.
And does this actually show up when you use them on, say, real text?
Oh, definitely. The papers show that when you train MDMs on natural language, where there is a natural left-to-right flow, they actually do worse than ARMs at first. That performance gap seems directly linked to this order-agnostic training. Forcing them to learn from all these random permutations hurts their ability to model the normal sequence likelihood.
Okay, but I remember reading about a blessing of task diversity.
Yeah.
So it's not all bad on the training side. There's some upside to this torture chamber.
That's a good point. Yeah, there is. Even though the overall task is exponentially harder, their performance doesn't just fall off a cliff compared to ARMs. Training on many diverse, hard subproblems can help with things like optimization, maybe positive transfer between tasks. It builds a certain kind of robustness.
But it doesn't solve the core issue.
No.
they still perform unevenly. The sources talk about this imbalance across masking problems. They're much worse at predicting tokens in totally unknown positions, latent positions, compared to filling gaps where they have surrounding words observation position.
Right. Which leads to the big question. If they know some problems are incredibly hard for them, how do they avoid those when they actually need to generate something useful?
The inference ingenuity, how MDMs plan for the best.
And that's where the inference part gets really clever.
So they've gone through this intense training, seen every possible permutation, even the impossible ones. But yeah, if they just stumble into those hard problems during generation, what good was it?
This is where the magic happens, right? The planning for the best.
Exactly, steering for the calm. The key insight is that, unlike some other diffusion models, these discrete MDMs have multiple ways they could unmask the tokens. There isn't just one fixed path for the reverse process.
Multiple valid paths. Right. Now, if you had a theoretically perfect MDM that aced every masking problem, the path wouldn't matter. But real MDMs, as we just discussed, are uneven. They do have weaknesses.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. So instead of just randomly picking the next token to reveal, they can choose, they can be strategic.
Precisely. That's adaptive inference. They use what the paper calls an oracle, basically a smart strategy to decide which masked token to unmask next. And the goal is specifically to sidestep those computationally hard problems, the ones they struggled with during training.
And this happens without more training, just using the knowledge they already have.
That's the really cool part. No extra training needed for the core model. The pre-trained MDM already has the necessary information. It just needs a smarter way to access and apply it during generation.
Wow. Okay, so how does this oracle, this guide, work? Are there different strategies it uses?
Yes, the research highlights two main ones. There's top K probability.
Which sounds like just picking the token the model is most sure about.
Yeah, basically. Unmask the positions where the model has the highest confidence in its prediction for the actual token value. But often, a better one is top K probability margin.
Margin. How's that different?
It looks for not just high confidence, but clear confidence. It wants a big gap between the probability of the top predicted token and the second best prediction.
Ah, so it avoids situations where the model is kind of torn between two likely options.
Exactly. It prioritizes positions where there's a decisive winner. This prevents it from getting stuck in ambiguous spots where it's likely to make a mistake.
And the impact of switching to this adaptive approach, you said it was dramatic.
Oh, it's night and day. Look at the Sudoku example from the sources. Standard MDM inference, random unmasking order, less than 7% accuracy. Abysmal.
Right, barely anything.
But switch to the adaptive top K probability margin strategy. The accuracy jumps to almost 90%.
90 from 7.
Yep. And get this. This performance doesn't just blow the standard MDM out of the water. It actually beats autoregressive models that had 7 times more parameters and were explicitly trained using the correct sequential order for solving Sudoku.
Wait, so the MDM, by figuring out its own best path during inference, does better than a bigger model that was essentially spoon-fed the optimal path?
That's what the results show. It suggests this unsupervised planning during inference can discover really effective reasoning strategies on the fly.
That is genuinely impressive. It really makes you wonder. What about even harder puzzles?
Good question. The sources looked into that too, with easy to hard generalization on Sudoku. They tested on puzzles that needed strategies the models hadn't explicitly seen, maybe requiring backtracking.
How did the adaptive MDM do there?
Again, significantly better than the ARM trained with ordering information. We're talking roughly 50% accuracy for the adaptive MDM versus about 33% for the ARM on these harder unseen puzzles.
So it suggests the MDMs aren't just good at the task, they might be more robust when the difficulty ramps up.
It certainly points that way. The hypothesis is that because they trained on such a massively diverse, exponentially larger set of infilling problems, they might have extracted deeper, more generalizable knowledge about the underlying structure, which helps them adapt. Outro.
Okay, let's pull this all together. We've seen mass diffusion models go from this intense, almost punishing training phase grappling with countless hard problems.
Problems that seem almost designed to make them fail.
Right. To then using this really clever inference strategy, this planning for the best, to achieve stunning results, especially on tricky things like logic puzzles. It really flips the script on the idea of order in generation. It's not a fixed track anymore. It's like a compass they use to navigate.
Absolutely. And connecting it to the bigger picture in AI, I think this work really underscores a shift, doesn't it? It's not just about the training data or the model size. It's also critically about how the model uses its knowledge at inference time. This adaptive path selection is a fantastic example of more flexible, arguably more intelligent generation.
It feels like we're just scratching the surface here. The research itself mentions exploring even smarter adaptive strategies, moving beyond logic puzzles.
Imagine applying this kind of strategic planning to language generation or scientific discovery. Who knows what they could plan next?
A lot to think about. What kind of complex sequences could we navigate if the model itself helps choose the best path forward? Well, that's our deep dive for today. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep exploring. This has been The Deep Dive.